guys, Eric and Roth here to talk about Game of Thrones, the episode Kissed by Fire. Last week, there was a lot of big events at the very end and really crowd-pleasing ones. Matt Fowler in his review said he liked this episode even more, and I would agree with him as far as just very impactful character moments throughout. Maybe not sort of the biggest, action ones, but a lot of great scenes.
Yeah, I think that this week I would agree too. In total, I think was a stronger episode. I think last week had that excellent last scene that was so exciting to watch. But there was a great balance between the characters in this one. Everyone felt like they had forward momentum. And frankly, the dialogue was just so on par, snappy, and quick. And we forget how funny this show really can be. And I think that I was reminded of that this week as well. And in the next moment, heartbreaking.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great episode for the characters. Great episode for Jon Snow, who got laid. No longer a boy, now a man.
No longer a crow.
No longer a crow. And again, it's this whole, sort of how far undercover are you going? When are you going to really lose yourself? He just broke one of the sort of big things that he's supposed to live by.
Yeah, he broke the code. And I mean, I think that my favorite moment from that, though, is you don't know anything. Showed him a little bit about how it's done in the South, Missy.
Not only winter was coming on that one.
Oh my God. Sorry. Yes, a great scene for Jon Snow and a great progression for his character. And I think that Matt also said that I would also agree, well, at what point do you want to just sort of drop the subterfuge and really have this be your life?
Right, because, when you think about right before that, when he's having to lie about exactly what he knows and doesn't know and how many people are left behind at the Night's Watch, wouldn't it just be better just to take off with this nice girl and have sex in caves? You know?
But the truth is that no matter what he's going to do, he's going to be at war. Everybody's at war right now. And then no matter sort of what side he's on, it's dangerous.
Yeah, there's still living dead things out there.
Yeah, but what was an interesting reflection to me was the idea that they chose their leader. I still think that that's kind of what you're going to decide. That's going to be your defining line at this point. Is do you want to live in a world where you choose your leader or where your leader is chosen for you?
Yeah. Well, speaking of leaders, his brother Robb, who is the king of the North, his brother Robb is his father's son.
So annoyingly
and
so.
To a fault, unfortunately. In this episode, sort of doing the noble thing, doing the right thing, you can see him making the wrong call because he just lost half of his army by making the decision to avenge the deaths of their prisoners.
I think that what was so well written about that moment, though, was that you could tell where Robb was getting egged on.
Yeah.
By Stark himself, by saying, oh, well, you're just going to let us go, give me a little scolding and let me go. And he was sort of signing his own death warrant by egging him on that way. But he was also calling out for the ruin of Robb Stark, the Stark family line, and to lose half his army. And yeah, I agree with you. I love Robb. I think he's a great leader. And I think Ned was wonderful. Of course, I loved him as well. But that moment when you knew that he was going to, despite all logic and good advice, frankly, from the women in his life, he was going to do the thing that was the right thing to do. I admire him for it to some degree, but man, wouldn't it have been better to be a strategist in that moment? Yeah,
and now he's forced to go to the phrase for help, which is just sort of a horrible, ridiculous situation to even put himself in because he could have had all these soldiers still with him.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Arya, it's funny with Arya's story because we got another look at sort of the big supernatural side here. When we've got Beric, the flaming sword, very cool, but this guy can keep being resurrected, so that's a new thing.
I think what's interesting about that, too, is that it's lending this sort of legitimacy to Melisandre and the idea of the Lord of Light, because, I mean, this stuff works. Like, this crap works, right? He's getting resurrected, but it's so beautifully written again. I mean, I know I'm sort of repeating myself, but the idea that he's losing a piece of himself each time he comes back, I thought was an interesting idea. But also, again, there is that idea with the Brotherhood that they choose their leader. Right. That's why Gendry was sort of on board with them, is that he's tired of this society, the structure of the society as it stands, and he wants to be in a place where he has some autonomy and some self-empowerment.
And, speaking of the sort of Lord of Light and those who follow him, Stannis, there was some really good stuff around Stannis here. I did think it was very odd to take a year and a half to say, hey, he's got a wife and a daughter. I mean, I think we saw his wife for all of 2 seconds when he was first introduced. Yeah. I think a lot of people watching the show understandably didn't even know he had a wife and a daughter. So that was a little weird, but then some actually very interesting stuff. First of all, because his wife is such a believer, she's like, yeah, it's cool that you're sleeping with that woman.
Yeah, I thought that was a great, I mean, first of all, it's just so creepy. Yeah. The babies in the jar and
what do you mean creepy?
Not at all.
Right.
It's totally normal to have your daughter locked in a tower because she does not please you and because she is female.
Yes.
I thought that was a really, I think it's good because it adds flavor to Stannis because he's such an interesting character in the sense that in just that moment, that exchange with his daughter, you see his compassion.
Yeah.
You know, you see that he loves her, he wants to do right by her, but you also see that sort of part of him that's completely cold, inaccessible, unable to really, maybe not cold, but unable to truly express emotion. He's just so rigid. You know, he doesn't really know how to deal with her. He doesn't really know how to make the situation better. But, you know, everyone is on board with Melisandre and the Lord of Light.
Yeah, you know, very sweet stuff, too, though, with his daughter going to see Davos, the fact that Davos couldn't read. I mean, this is stuff that could sort of just feel like, why are we dealing with this? But I like Davos a lot, and this was like a sort of very poignant little thing to interject into the storyline as we sort of have poor Davos locked up here. Speaking of people who are sort of prisoners in strange situations, though, big episode for Jaime, and I think a real turning point for a lot of people who still might have just said, oh, Jaime, I hate Jaime, there's nothing about Jaime that I like. I would think that some people, more people, might be sympathetic to him after a wonderful, wonderful scene for him in this episode.
I would hope so. I mean, I think, again, like these characters are so dynamic and so complex, and now that you have sort of the background, I mean, why is he the Kingslayer? You think for 13 years he's carried around this moniker, he's carried around this shame, he's seen people looking down on him, and he did kind of have a F you attitude about it, you know, like, fine, think what you will. Frankly, I understand that, you know, I understand sort of adopting that attitude, like, sure, yeah, I'm that guy. But the truth is so much more complex than that, you know, and when he says, what would you do? Well, of course, we all would have done what Jaime did, you hope.
Right,
You would have done what Jaime did and stopped the whole, you know, 1,000 people from burning alive. But I hope that people do see him as a more complex character now. But we can never forget what he did to Bran.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You know?
He's not squeaky clean, that's for sure. But a great moment when he said, you know, my name is Jaime. That was actually a very heartbreaking moment after explaining the whole Kingslayer thing. You know, we didn't spend a lot of time with Dany here this week, but there was actually another. It was a good episode for like poignant, touching moments, and the whole thing with Grey Worm, the leader of her army, and him choosing to keep the name, I thought was another great touch. I
thought that was a beautiful moment between the two of them, because I think that again, like it circles around this idea of leadership and what makes a leader, and even the conversation between Barristan and Jorah, I think sort of highlights, you know, called back to Jaime and the idea of loyalty, and you're loyal no matter if they're a lunatic or what. The whole theme of this episode was, for me, was, well, who should be a leader? And when should you not be loyal? And when should you be loyal? And they're just looking for someone that they can believe in at this point. I think that that's what everyone is really looking for. And I think they feel like they can believe in Dany. Yeah,
and certainly, she is getting quite a following at this point. Back in King's Landing, although there weren't a lot of scenes there, they were very interesting ones. You know, Tyrion is such a great character, and he kind of can talk him, you know, he out-talks anyone, except maybe for the first time he got out-talked when he met Elena. That was really interesting to see the two of them together, and the fact that she kind of was owning that conversation. He was going to her asking for money in the first place, and then she really kind of said, okay, here's what's happening, here's what I'm going to do. Yeah, I thought that was a great moment. She's such a great character. She's so much fun to watch. And watching him try to parry with her, and he usually he's the winner of a verbal parry. She just demolished him in 2 seconds flat, told him what was that, laid down the law, and then was like, fine, here's your money, you know? And I thought that was beautiful. So he sort of had a win, you know, even in that. And then poor thing gets to his dad, and his win just doesn't matter, you know? It's like he saved them. This is actually really important work that he's doing. He's saving them a lot of money that they need. But they're like, whatever. We don't care. Let's talk about the power plays that are happening. Let's talk about the power plays. Yeah, you know, poor Sansa is quite the pawn here. Everyone's she's being moved around the board by people, and she doesn't even realize. She knows it to some extent, but not how many people. The fact that Littlefinger would have, you know, one of his men seduce Loras was a great touch, you know, to get the information he wanted. And then the end there, you know, when Tyrion comes in and has a very, you know, unexpected and surprising and unwanted wedding announcement given to him. Yeah, that scene was beautiful. It's funny, too, because somebody said to me, oh, you're so harsh on Sansa. I don't dislike Sansa as a character. I really actually have a lot of compassion for the situation she's in. She's a young girl, and it's a very I wouldn't have handled that very well at all. I probably would have just been just as naive and oblivious. It's just interesting to me that everyone else in our family seems to be adjusting to this world a bit more easily than she does. She still is a pawn. That may or may not change. In any event, that scene was great because, speaking of teenagers, it's so wonderful because Cersei just reverts to a teenage girl. Anytime she's in those situations with Tyrion, you just see her become a teenage girl, and then, man, her dad came at the backside and smacked her down. That was a heartbreaking moment for me. I know we don't love Cersei, but
man, I don't want to see her go through that marriage again.
Well, I wouldn't say it was heartbreaking. I actually kind of took a little perverse pleasure, only because she was being so, she is being a teenage girl with her brother, because she was taking all this pleasure in what was happening to Tyrion, and then it turns out same thing from her. Interesting deviation from the book that I'm totally fine with, which is that they got rid of Loras and Marjorie's other brother, that she was supposed to marry. It was kind of extraneous character. But yeah, they're both, she and her brother are more bonded than they like to think at this point.
Exactly, and I mean, I meant the whole situation as heartbreaking. For Sansa having to marry Tyrion, for Tyrion having to sort of knowing that it's cruel and having to do it anyway, and Cersei just can't win.
No one's winning right now, except maybe Littlefinger, we'll see. This was a great episode. What did you think? Are you excited by all these sort of twists and turns, all the pawns in the game moving around? Let us know what you think. We'll be back next time, guys. Thanks.